So, good afternoon, dear distinguished guests and participants of the 18th WCEE. Welcome to the Meet the Masters event this afternoon, implemented as part of the CSI IAEE Masters Series, which is generously sponsored by Computers and Structures Incorporation. The Master Series of this 18th WCEE features the following 4 individuals and masters for read, meet, and greet the masters. Among the 4 masters today, I like to invite Professor Li Xie, China, for the Meet the Masters lecture. Professor Xie is the honorary director and professor of the Institute of Engineering Mechanics as part of the China's Earthquake Administration. By the way, I'm Masayoshi Nakashima from Japan, serving as the immediate past president of IAEE, and my task today is to address a few words for introducing Professor Li. Professor Li Xie has written a monograph entitled Ranking Strong Earthquake Ground Motion Recordings based on the degree of damage to structures caused by the whole time history. This monograph is his narrative about his comprehensive research on the characteristics of strong motions and their significant parameters, the concept and development of destruction intensity shaking, ranking, and verification of the ranking relative to the real structural damage. Here is a short introduction of Professor Xie's professional work. He was born in China and studied at the Tianjin University, China. Then he joined the Institute of Engineering Mechanics, China Earthquake Administration, and has dedicated his professional life to the Institute for over 60 years until now. He led the Institute as a director and honorary director for many decades and conducted research and education in various fields of related to earthquake engineering and engineering seismology. He also worked seriously on developing the earthquake engineering community in China, having served as a Secretary General and the President of the China Disaster Prevention Association and the President of the China Association for Earthquake Engineering, among many others. Professor Xie's contribution to the IAEE is also very notable, with his service as IAEE's director between 1988 and 1992, and IAEE's vice president from 2004 to 2008. So in retrospect, I had the interaction with Professor Li Xie for over 3 decades. My first encounter was in 1988 when I made my very first trip to Harbin and learned about the atmosphere of Chinese research and education in structural and earthquake engineering. It is a photo taken during my first visit at the front of his institute main building. Here is a young Professor Xie in the middle, and it is tiny Masayoshi Nakashima. But anyway, it was a time when our long-year friendship began. So after the turn of the century, I began visiting China more regularly for conferences and seminars. On a few occasions, one of the other guest speakers was Professor Xie, and each time our paths crossed, we enjoyed our reunions. I also admit that listening to his lectures, I'm always enlightened by his broader vision of the promotion of societal resilience for the sake of better human and societal welfare. He has been an expert in engineering seismology, as evidenced by his monograph this time. He has been very keen on advanced structural engineering to enhance the earthquake resistance of built infrastructures, and he plays a vital role in the assessment and management of earthquake-induced losses. This great breadth of his research is the source that has ensured his strong and long-term relationships worldwide. Unfortunately, Professor Xie cannot come to Milano this time to deliver his lecture due to his health issue. Don't worry, he remains fine, but Milano is a bit too distant from China to travel. So instead of his physical attendance, he kindly made a video of his lecture, and we wish to broadcast the video during this lecture time. Professor Xie is also kind enough to dispatch a junior colleague of his. The person is Professor Jinjun Hu, who belongs to the Institute of Engineering Mechanics in the China Earthquake Administration. So he came to Milano with a video and Professor Xie's message to the 18th WCE and the dear participants at today's lecture. I now ask Professor Hu to come to the podium and deliver a speech to us. Thank you so much. And please enjoy this show for the coming 40 minutes. Now, Professor Hu, okay, please come by and then deliver your speech. Go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Nakashima, for very kind words. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you all for attending the master lecture of Professor Xie. Well, we're very much looking forward.
Mr.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are very much looking forward to attending Professor Xie's speech. Unfortunately, Professor Xie Li could not attend this meeting in person due to health reasons. Well, this is a matter of great regret. I have been asked to come here to introduce Professor Xie, so I will take a few minutes to briefly introduce Professor Xie and then play his video lecture. Professor Xie Li was born in 1939, and he graduated from Tianjin University in 1960. He is currently the honorary director and professor of the Institute of Engineering Mechanics China Earthquake Administration and the president of China Earthquake Engineering Association. Professor Xie has been engaged in earthquake engineering research for more than 60 years. His representative works include the measurement and analysis of strong ground motion, the most unfavorable seismic design ground motion, unified seismic design spectrum, earthquake risk analysis system based on GIS and AI, etc. He is the main founder of the Chinese Strong Earthquake Motion Instrumentation Network. He played a leading role in developing the first performance-based seismic design code in China. Professor Xie was invited by the United Nations Secretary General to serve as a member of the United Nations Ad Hoc Expert Group and a member of the Scientific and Technical Committee for the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction for 10 years. He served as director of IAEE from 1988 to 1992, and the IAEE's vice president from 2004 to 2008. And he was elected as honorary director of IAEE in 2008. He was the chairman of the International Commission on Strong Motion Seismology and of the International Association of Seismology and the Physics of Earth's Interior for 80 years. In 1992, he co-worked with Professor George Hausner of the US and Professor Cobolli of Japan and Professor Casasiadi of Italy to establish the International Structure Control Association. In 1994, he was elected as a founding member of the Chinese Academy of Engineering. Finally, I wish this master lecture a fruitful and complete success. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Hu. Now, here's the video begins. Professor Li Xie's strong voice. Please enjoy.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I feel honored and proud to have this opportunity to make my presentation at this very important meeting, and I would like to express my appreciation to the International Association for Earthquake Engineering. Today, I would like to present some of my points on ranking of strong ground motion and its engineering applications. I will start my presentation from the first part, explanation of terminology, and then discuss in more detail specific issues on background and objectives of our research, the way for solving problems, research progress, engineering applications, and the conclusion remark. First, I would like to simply introduce some terminology of this study. The first term is strong ground motion. I think you all are familiar with the basic concept in earthquake engineering. It means the motion of the Earth's subsurface recorded with seismographs during earthquakes, which is generally represented by seismic acceleration time history. The second term is ranking of strong ground motion, which is the key word of this presentation. It is also the final purpose and the results of this study. It means the ranking of strong ground motion is worked out in terms of the order of their destructive capabilities to engineering structures. It includes two aspects. One is to find suitable parameters to express the destructive ability of ground motion. The other is to determine the corresponding strength of this parameter. So here's the question. Why do we need to run the ground motion? Does this ranking exist? How can we get this ranking? In order to answer the above questions, I would like to start from the background and objectives of the research. So the question will be raised, why it is important to study the destructive effects of strong ground motions on structures. Generally speaking, as we all know, the time course of strong earthquake ground motion is the main factor of generating seismic load on structures. And it is also the most important cause of seismic damage to structures. However, the peak ground accelerations as the main parameter applied in seismic design may be reasonable for stiff structures, but not necessarily for flexible structures, because the peak ground acceleration is often not suitable for explaining the failure causes of flexible structures. In addition, earthquake ground motion has completely different effects on different types of structures. So it is a bottleneck ranking earthquake ground motion according to the degree of damage to all types of structures. So it has become one of the greatest challenges in development of earthquake engineering to rank tens of thousands of strong earthquake ground motion records according to their effects on the magnitude of damage to structures. Actually, it is a fundamental scientific issue in earthquake engineering. In the past 120 years since the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, the modern earthquake engineering has made significant progress, but this one major challenge still remains unsolved. Can a suitable ground motion parameter be found to indicate the damage potential of the ground motion to structures? Is it even possible to run them according to their damaging potential to all types of structures? If any parameter of ground motion can directly reflect the damage effect, it must meet the following two conditions. First, the parameter should be the main causes of structural damage and failures. Second, the value of this parameter should be a monotonic function of structural damage and failure. In the last 100 years, dozens of ground motion parameters have been recommended as the main factors causing structural seismic failure. They are often used to characterize the seismic damage to structures. Some of them had been recommended as main causes of seismic damage and even applied in seismic design, such as the PGA, PGV, EPA, EPV, etc. The table on the left is the recommended parameters attempting to represent seismic damage proposed by some researchers. The table on the right is several structural damage indexes, like the inter-story shear force, maximum inter-story displacement ratio, and so on. Unfortunately, those recommended parameters usually have good consistency with structural damage index of some type of structures, but not for all types of structures. The main task of seismic design is to ensure that the designed structure can withstand future earthquakes and ensure the normal function of the structure during and after earthquake. The great challenge in seismic design is not knowing what kind of ground motion the designed structure will encounter in the future. What kind and how much risk will the structures have? The main reasons for the above two difficulties are, first, the design ground motion parameters used are not always the main factors causing structural damage to all structures, such as peak ground acceleration, peak ground velocity, etc., do not always well represent the true seismic load subjecting to all structures. Second, there are great uncertainties in the ground motion parameters used as input for seismic design. Here, we will discuss the way for solving problems. Why do we need to study on the ranking of ground motions? Just like I have mentioned about that, The biggest challenge of structural seismic design is not knowing what kind of ground motion the structure will be subject to and what kind of risks it will face in the future. However, we can assume that the ground motion acting on buildings in the future will be very similar to one of the countless seismic records recorded in past earthquakes around the world. Therefore, if the ground motion can be ranked according to its destructive ability, and we apply them in seismic design, the seismic risk of the design structure could be effectively controlled. In this way, the problem can be solved. Then, how do we study the ranking of ground motions? In this study, a single degree of freedom system is taken as the research object. However, all the research results could be applicable to multi-degree of freedom system. In theory, structural damage should be caused by the whole process of ground motion, rather not by a certain parameter of ground motion. So the time history of ground motion is also used in our sequencing studies. All the ground motions collected are classified into 4 categories based on the condition of sites where accelerographs were located. According to the structural period of the structure, all structures are divided into 3 types: stiff, flexible, and flexible. It is assumed that the dynamic characteristics of the structure can be expressed simply in terms of its natural vibration period and the degree of nonlinearity. In other words, structures will have the same response to the same ground motion as long as they have the same natural vibration period and nonlinearity. The ground motions are ranked according to their potential damage ability to the same type of structures. The effects of structural nonlinearity on ground motion ordering are studied. The ranking of ground motions is expressed in terms of exceeding probability within 100 years. Finally, the correctness of ground motion ranking for each type of structures on different site conditions is proved. Now I am presenting you the main technical procedures we adopted in our research. It includes 5 parts. The first is about collecting reliable earthquake ground motion records. It includes selection and the classification of ground motion records over the world. The secondary is the selection of suitable parameters of ground motion, and the selected parameter will have good consistence with the damage to the structures of same type. The third, we have to classify structures into different types so that all structures of the same type will have the same damage mechanism as well as the same damage indexes. And then the ground motion could be ranked with the measure of damage indexes. Finally, the recommended ranking of design ground motion for each type of structures are given in the form of exceedance probability. Now we are going to talk about the research work we have done. A total of nearly 6,000 ground motion records have been collected. And after screening, more than 5,000 records were selected and constituted the rank strong ground motion database. These records come from the US, Europe, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, China, and other countries. The selected ground motions are divided into 4 categories according to the site conditions. The table on the left gives the number of ground motion records for each category of site. The table on the right shows the distribution of the magnitude and the epicentral distance of all ground motions on different sites. We classify our structures into 3 types based on the natural periods. The boundary lines between different types of structures are defined by the positions of the intersecting points of the 3 average spectral lines on the tripartite spectra. The middle diagram shows a very interesting result, from which we can find that the more the types of structures, the less the deviation and the higher of accuracy. For example, if we classify structures into 50 types, the ranking of ground motion will be very accurate. Therefore, the number of structure types is the key factor for an accurate rank of ground motions. This slide is going to show you the boundary line of different structural types. First, I would like to point out that the different types of structures are separated by period determined by the intersection of the 3 mean spectra on the tripartite spectra. For example, the period range of the stiff structures is 0.05 to 0.3 seconds for size 1, 0.05 to 0.4 seconds for size 2, 0.05 to 0.55 seconds for size 3, and 0.05 to 0.90 seconds for size 4. The stiff flexible type structures and the flexible structures are also determined by the same way. It should point out that all structures of the same type will certainly have the same failure mechanism and the same damage index so that we can successfully make ranking of ground motions. 3 different types of structures, stiff, flexible, and flexible, are listed on the first column. In the second column, our possible damage index include maximum interstory shear force, maximum interstory displacement ratio, maximum interstory displacement, maximum displacement, maximum velocity, maximum accelerations, overall structural damage index, including both hysteretic energy and the displacement, etc., are listed. What listed in the third column are various strong motion parameters. The target of the research is to find the suitable damage index and the ground motion parameters to make high coexistence between them. In this way, the failure mechanisms of different types of structures and their corresponding ground motion parameters are identified. The distribution of different damage indices is analyzed for stiff, flexible, and flexible structures, respectively. For stiff structures, the maximum acceleration response is selected as the structural damage index. For stiff, flexible, and flexible structures, the maximum velocity response is selected as the structural damage index. To study the effect of nonlinearity of structures on ranking, the yield strength coefficient Cy is used to represent the linearity of structures. These figures show the comparison of ground motion ranking based on the elastic analysis and on nonlinear response with different yield strength ratio, where delta is the standard deviation. When the yield strength coefficient Cy is not less than 0.3, the correlation between the elastic response ranking and the elastic response ranking is very high. It means that the nonlinearity of structures will give little effect on the ranking of ground motions. According to the current seismic design code, the yield strength coefficient Cy is usually much greater than 0.3. Our study shows that the degree of nonlinearity of the structure and the seismic action has a very strong effect on the structural response values. However, it has little effect on the relative ranking of the ground motions. This slide shows the result of the stiff flexible structure. The results are for flexible structures. They are very similar to those for stiff structures. That is, the degree of non-linearity of structure and the seismic action has a very strong effect on the response values of the structure, but almost no effect on the ranking of the ground motions. All the results described above are worked out for a single degree of freedom system. Now we are going to examine whether the results obtained so far are still valid for multi-degree of freedom system. From the figure, the ordinate is the ground motion rank based on the multiple degree of freedom system, and abscissa refers to the single degree of freedom system. As can be seen from the figure, the ranking based on the single degree of freedom response is almost the same as that of the multiple degree of freedom system. This slide shows an expression for the ranking of actual ground motions record. The left figure shows the histogram of the distribution of ground motion acceleration response for stiff structures. The black curve in the middle figure refers to the cumulative probability, and the blue one refers to the exceeding probability. This is a table that gives the results of ranking of ground motions for stiff structures and the different size categories with different probabilities of exceedance. Totally, the rankings of ground motions will work out at 12 levels with exceeding probability of 1%, 2%, 5%, 10%, and so on, respectively, within 100 years. This is the table that gives the results of ranking of ground motions for stiff flexible structures. This is a table that gives the results of ranking of ground motions for flexible structures. This is the recommended ranking of ground motion for stiff structures on site category 2. For stiff structures, the most hazardous ground motion is number RSN 8165, and the red one is the second, and the blue one is the third. And they are all listed as very low exceeding probability, or we can call them the most unfavorable ground motions. This is the recommended ranking of ground motion for stiff flexible structures on site category 2. The slide shows you the recommended ranking of ground motions for flexible structures on site category 2. Now I'm going to present to you how we apply our research results in practice. This slide shows an example to apply our research results to assess the safety of a new suspension bridge. The main span of the suspension bridge is a steel truss stiffened beam with a length of 550 meters. The suspension bridge has a height of 55 meters with span ratio of 1/10. The bridge was built in the area with high seismicity in Western China. The design PGA equals 0.36 G. Ground motion time histories for seismic design are provided in accordance with the regular seismic hazard analysis. In this slide, the red dots are the results of the design according to the seismic hazard analysis, which is still 30% lower than the result according to the rank ground motions. It seems that current seismic design based on the seismic hazard analysis will underestimate the risk. In addition, the ranked ground motions have also been applied for masonry concrete structures, cable-stayed bridges, reinforced concrete building structures, and subway stations. It has shown that the seismic design based on the seismic hazard analysis, or directly according to the seismic design code, in comparing with based on the ranked ground motions, will be prone to underestimate the seismic risk. Now we come to the conclusion of our research. In our research, the time history of ground motion is the fundamental cause of the seismic damage to structures. The recommended rank ground motion is worked out based on the structural response under the whole ground motion time history. In the research, structures are divided into 3 types. There are stiff types, stiff flexible types, and the flexible types of structures. The damage index for the same type of structures is the same, and it can be used to rank strong ground motion record based on the statistical analysis. We ranked tens of thousands of strong ground motion records to 4 categories of sites and 3 types of structures: as well as their ability to damage structures, and got a total of 12 sets of data, which could serve as the database for seismic design. It will provide us more reasonable input to assess the seismic safety of the structures. The degree of nonlinearity of a structure has great effect on seismic response of structures. However, it does not give significant effect on the ranking of ground motion. In order to reduce the uncertainty of input ground motion for seismic design, the ranked ground motion database is a good choice. A detailed description on the ranking of strong ground motion has been published by the International Association for Earthquake Engineering as one of the global master monographs and distributed at the 18th World Conference on Earthquake Engineering. Okay, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, it has been my great pleasure to share you my viewpoints on ranking of strong ground motions and its engineering applications. Now I have to finish my talk. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.